Hello, Robinson ISD. This is James Hughes here, and I'm with the amazing Amber Clemons, 7th grade math teacher at our Robinson Junior High. And we're here today to talk about her classroom, some of the amazing things that she has going on. First, Amber, let me say thank you so much for taking the time. This is actually our second interview. She's so amazing. She would do this twice. Hopefully it will not be a third time. And so, but thank you so much for coming.
That's risk-taking.
Hey, we're all about risk-taking, and you're going to hear some about it. With that said, let's jump right in.
Okay.
Okay, so briefly tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, how long you've been at Robinson, if you've taught anywhere else besides Robinson.
Okay. I have a husband, Chris. Have been married almost 24 years. A daughter who is at Tarleton. She's a sophomore at Tarleton Halen. And then an almost 4-year-old son, Jack. I've been in education. This is year 23. Almost all of it at Robinson. I started my career at Bosqueville, a little community just outside Waco.
Yeah.
I've been at McGregor and Waco ISD, but most of my time has been here at Robinson, where I also went to school myself. Okay. I'm one of those.
It's fun. It's fun getting you guys back. It's always a good crew, and so they must be well liked if they bring you back.
That's what I think. That's what I think.
So in teaching, who's had the biggest impact on how you teach right now?
I can't ever answer biggest influence in education without referencing my dad. As far as getting into education, I would say he was my biggest influence. Early on in college, I played around. I went in as a chemistry major and played around with some other ideas, but I kept coming back to, but I really just want to be in the classroom. I played school growing up as a kid all my life and wanted to be like my dad. So I would say early on it was my dad as far as getting into education. As far as how I teach now, which is vastly different than how I taught 5 years ago, definitely 10 years ago. I think I'd used the term with you before, talking about the perfect storm. I was ready for a change, doing something different in my classroom. At that point in time, we had Mr. Thomas, who had just come to Robinson, who introduced me to a couple of things that I kind of just stored in the back of my mind, but they were all things that I didn't know how to do because they involved technology. It was a little intimidating, so they were things that, I'll play around with that sometime. And then on came you, and then Ms. Pledger was also in the mix of that, so curriculum kind of became more aligned. So just all the perfect pieces were in play to really make a change. I feel like I had a team. It wasn't just here are some good ideas that I saw or heard about and tried to figure out myself. There was a team and a support system in play.
Every time I go in your class, I feel like I'm seeing something new and something out there, but the kids are always into it. I see them in here doing projects. How would you describe your class?
This is such a buzzword now, but my focus when my team is lesson planning, we have a big focus on keeping things student-centered. Student choice is a big part of what we do, and it's kind of like I know Love and Logic was popular a long time ago, and it's kind of like that, where we have choices in the classroom, but all of the choices are things that I'm okay with. So the kids have a choice, so they kind of feel some power in that. But at the same time, I'm okay with all of the choices. I think the biggest compliment anyone ever pays me is when they come in the room and it takes them a while to find me. Because I'm not at the front delivering a lecture, and you might have different groups of kids doing different things. It's not quiet, and sometimes volume is something we have to work on because the things that we do involve the kids talking, and so sometimes we have to have some talks about what does the volume need to be like. But it just looks, I feel like it looks busy, and it's not about me. I talk very little during the class period. If I am talking, I'm talking to one kid or a group of 2 or 3 kids.
I almost would say controlled chaos a little bit.
I don't mind it being called that.
So that brings up a question. You deal with rowdy junior high folks all the time, and you say it's never quiet in your room. So how do you do classroom management?
There aren't a set of rules that are the magic set of rules, or a set of consequences or rewards that are the magic set. I think with junior high kids, and maybe this is the case with all ages, is modeling over and over and over. I think a lot of it has to do with my attitude and remembering that they are 12 and 13 years old.
Yeah.
Because there are days where at the end of the day I think, oh my goodness, today was not good. But then when I really think about it, out of my 100 kids, it might have been just 5 or 6 that had an off day. So we do a lot, I call them family meetings. We do a lot of, okay guys, we're going to stop the academic stuff for just a few minutes. Let's sit and talk about what should the volume sound like when I'm talking? What should the volume sound like when you're watching a video lesson? And we literally practice that. Everybody right now, pretend you're watching a video lesson. What should that sound and look like? Yeah. So lots of modeling and then revisiting that. I know in a 46-minute class period, it's very tempting to let the volume escalate and think, oh, I'll address that tomorrow. And I've learned from experience you can't do that. You have to stop and readdress it. Not so much as not in a disciplinary kind of way. I try to take care of that privately, but just in a, hey, I think we all need a little reminder about what it should look and sound like in the classroom right now.
Going back to, you said that choice is a big deal for you with these students and giving them choice constantly. So what are some of the favorite things that you've done with them? What are some of your favorite activities maybe you constantly pull from the Clemons bag of tricks?
Some of my favorite activities, we do an activity where they create a scale model. I have a video that I show of a guy that the kids really relate to because he's young and he works in miniatures on movie sets. And so I show that video of this guy who at a very young age created his own production company. That's what he does is the miniatures for some movies. And then That's awesome. The kids love that. And then we make a scale model. They get to kind of play with that idea. We just did something where kids designed a video game character using kind of some throwback technology that they might have seen in older video games, and we linked that to some fraction decimal percent calculations. Anything that involves modeling, anything we can model with money or sports or food, that we do that, and I try to bring that in a way that just kind of gets them engaged, gets them to buy in, and then move on. Because there are times, and I'm reading a book right now that's all about engagement, and there are some things in there that I thought, I really probably need to revisit that. And he talks about, it's fine to talk about engagement, but you have to also focus on what are they engaged in. There was a really popular bottle flipping activity that dealt with probability, and we did not do it, but we did think about using that activity. But now I can see what this guy is saying. He's right. My kids would have been so focused on the bottle flipping that I think the next day that's what they would have remembered, not the probability.
How long does it take you to develop these things?
The first year that we moved to this instructional model, it took a long time. Being part of a team that worked together and planned together was huge. You couldn't sit in your meetings and know, when I get back to my room, I'm just planning my own thing. We had to all have buy-in because there was no way any one person could plan all of the activities. So we kind of divide and conquer. We kind of figure out what our strengths are, and we know, okay, well, this person's going to take care of planning these activities, and this person's going to take care of planning these activities. So it does take a while, but now we're in year 3 of teaching this way. So now we kind of have a bank, we have a storage tank of a bunch of different activities that we can pull from. And we make little notes about, we need to tweak this if we do this next year. And so now that we've built up sort of that treasure trove of activities, then that has made it much, much better, because now we can focus on really fine-tuning the whole system, because before I felt like our focus was always on, oh my gosh, we gotta keep our head above water and plan that next activity. And now I don't feel like that. So
you're learning pathway sheets, which learning the pathway sheets are basically the student's guide to what they're doing over a course of time, over their unit. Are y'all remaking those each year?
I would say we're still in the stage where we're having to tweak it. We're getting closer and closer. I mean, next year will involve fewer tweaks than this year, but I also think if you ever get to a point where you have a year where you don't tweak anything, I don't think you should ever get there. I mean, 'cause none of us are perfect. But we're not having to make as massive of changes as we were before. I mean, we're basically now able to go in and just edit a few things. And the thing I think we tweak the most now, we have to make our room operate in such a way that the kids can be independent as much as possible. So our directions need to be really simple, and they need to be in lots of different places. So those are the things I find, I'll realize, okay, that direction sounded really clear to me, but now that I see what the 12-year-old is interpreting it as, I need to tweak the way I worded that. So most of our tweaks now involve making it more 12 and 13-year-old friendly.
And you just said a lot of different instructions constantly. So how do you get those instructions out? I'm assuming you don't individually go to them and tell them.
No.
What do you use to get out your instructions?
The key this year, and my teaching partner and I this has just been a huge thing. On Twitter, we found these ideas called Edu Protocols. And it basically talks about taking a framework and then repeating that framework over and over, but replacing the content. So our kids have learned, I think we have 8 frameworks. We have an activity called Electric Slide, an activity called Making Math, On the Hunt. There's 3 or 4 others. We have a flip grid one. So they know that on the pathway, those are going to be the activity choices. We just change out the content. So one week On the Hunt might be related to 2-step equations. And on the next On the Hunt, it might be related to finding constant rate of change. But as far as the actual directions, we have them written out in the classroom on the supply table. The supply table is critical that be organized. So the directions are written out there. They scroll across my screen. They have them in Schoology in digital form. So take your pick. I mean, some kids will pull the directions up on their screen. Other kids I see go to the drawer on the supply table and pull out the paper copy. But it's in lots of places, and they're concise.
Okay, now I'm sure this goes into that classroom management part, but it sounds like there's a lot of routines. When they're using these things, how long do you feel like it takes you to establish your routine at the start of each year?
This year especially, I feel like we did a great job on that first pathway. We were really deliberate. We stopped several times and modeled, okay, if you need a supply from the supply table, here's what it looks like. And I mean, I would literally ask, okay, let's say you've decided you're going to do On the Hunt. Where do you go to find that direction? Where do you go to find the On the Hunt signs in the room? And so we literally practiced that. The first pathway, I would say, was more about practicing operating within the pathway than it was about math.
Last question for you. So of all these things that you learned over the last few years of doing this, for a teacher that's just jumping into more of a blended atmosphere, what would be the 1 or 2 biggies that you would say, this is what you need to focus on this year to get you through to build a solid foundation?
I think definitely letting go of the idea that you've got to be perfect or that every lesson has to go without any little hiccups. And being willing to take some risks. I think that has to be a focused risk taking. It's very tempting when you're planning activities to focus on what will the kids think is fun, or you find something that this looks really neat. It still has to be focused on your content area, but you just have to be willing to take a risk and do things that maybe you're not 100% certain of. And then if it bombs, if a lesson falls flat on its face, then you just admit that to your students and say, hey, we're trying something new, didn't seem to work too well yesterday, so we're going to make these adjustments, and know that they're okay with that. It makes you a little more real and relatable to them.
Anyway, so final question, your Twitter handle, so those that are on Twitter can go and follow you.
Sure, Aggie Amber 95.
All right, Aggie Amber 95. There you have it, guys. Thanks so much for joining us this time on our Spotlight Teacher. Thank you, Miss Amber Clemons.
Absolutely.
And have a great day, Robinson ISD.